cats. I can't believe it's been 10 years since my father passed away. Like, seriously. This is the only picture I have of him. Is this picture right here. I think he was at some kind of dinner for something. Like, this was like obviously before he died. I think it was a couple years before he died. He passed away April 22nd, 2003. But I remember, I remember it like it was yesterday. Seriously. It just keeps playing over and over and over and over in my head for the past 10 years. And for some reason I haven't been able to let go of that thought. Sorry, but this is probably going to turn out to be very lengthy and very emotional. So if that kind of thing offends you, hit the road, Jack. Because today, I'm remembering my father. It was a Monday evening, April 21st, 2003. I was watching wrestling, like I always do. My father actually got me into that ever since I was a little kid. I remember, back then it was on Saturday mornings, so every Saturday morning I'd run into the living room and sit with my father and watch wrestling. That was our big thing. So anyway, back in 2002, something happened on the show, and I phoned my parents' place to, basically my father answered, and I'm like, oh, did you see that? And he's like, what? And I always phoned him during wrestling and talked to him about the show. And I was surprised that he wasn't watching it. He basically, he's like, no, I'm not watching it. And I'm like, oh, how come? And I was like, oh, we have company. I was like, oh, okay. I'm just shocked. They don't usually, they didn't usually ever have company, but anyway. I'm like, well, can I talk to Mom? I'm like, no, we have company. Got into this big argument. I ended up slamming the phone down and going back to watching the rest of Raw. And then I got ready for work. I was a security guard. I worked midnight shift downtown. And it was, so basically I finished getting ready and I went to work and blew it off like it was nothing, and I was going to phone him the next day to apologize for hanging up on him. So I went to work and basically did my shift as usual. I was on my rounds, patrolling this building downtown. It's dark in here. Anyway, I was patrolling the building downtown, and I was on my rounds, and it was like 1:30 in the morning, and my personal cell phone went off. It was my personal cell phone, not the company cell phone. So I answered it, and I had no idea who it was, and it was the pastor at my church telling me that my father passed away. And I was like, what? He basically and then he handed the phone to my mother, and I was talking to her, and what happened was, the company that they had over was my mother's cousin and her husband, and they drove them home, like halfway across the city, and then came back, and my father went into the bathroom and had a massive heart attack and died. And doctors said that he was dead before he hit the floor, so didn't suffer, but it was like pretty brutal. And all these years I've been thinking, like, maybe I should have been nicer to him on that phone call, because I never got to apologize. I never got to say goodbye to him. But yeah, and also, if this had happened like 15 to 20 minutes earlier, they would have been in the car, and he probably would have killed my mother too. So in a way, I'm thankful that it happened the way that it did, so that I was the one that was contacted first. My mother made sure that I was the one that was contacted first, because I don't usually get news about the family until I'm the last person to know. So she made sure that I knew about this first. And that was just a really brutal night, because from then on, my whole shift, the office that I was in when I got the phone call, I couldn't go in there. The next time I went in there, I saw my father sitting there, and it just freaked me out. So I skipped that office the whole night. And the weird thing is, my father was out of work at the time, and he actually had an interview for the security company that I was working for the next morning. So that was hard. And I actually, I couldn't phone them and tell them, and I got my supervisor to phone the office and tell them that he wasn't going to be there for the interview. But yeah, that was a very, very difficult night for me. I just found out from my mother that, she was in the apartment when he died. The official time of death was 11:45 on April 21st. And on paper, they went and they wrote the official time as 12:45 on the 22nd. So basically, on paper, it's the 22nd. In reality, it was the 21st. So these 2 days, the 21st and 22nd, should be remembered. All right. Seems like we're losing light in here. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to try and end this off on a good note. My favorite memory of my father would probably be the one incident that I keep talking about. I keep telling people, and I'm going to keep telling people for the rest of my life, because it's just, I don't know, it just, the whole situation brought me and my father closer together. In 2002, I was living with a girl who, for one reason or another, she decided she didn't want to be with me, and I found myself out on the street, nowhere to go. I was working at the time, the same security job that I was telling you about. I actually worked for that job since 1999 until 2004. So I was working, okay? I was making money for myself. I just didn't have a place to live at the time. So I made a deal with my parents, and I went and I stayed with them. Basically, the deal was that my mother held on to my bank card so that I could actually save the money to find my own place. And they were giving me 9 months to do so. So I was saving up and saving up. And one Saturday, I was sitting in the living room, okay? One of the rules was no loud music. right? And my father had this big, massive stereo with a big subwoofer, and you know, sitting in the living room, and I was listening to that, but I had it really, really low, so only I could hear it. My mother was doing whatever, and she decided to go out for the day, and my father was still sleeping, so I was sitting in the living room. I think I was reading a newspaper, and I was listening to the local radio station, the local rock station's top 20 or top 30. I think it was top 30, and I could hear my dad getting up, and he was in the bathroom, and I'm like, oh great, you know, and it was getting close to number 1, right, on the chart. So I wanted to hear that. I was like hoping that he would go back to sleep, and sure enough, I hear him walking down the hallway. You know, well, actually no, he had a shower. And then he comes walking down the hallway. Oh, great. Right? But I had it really low. I was, you know, my own personal volume, so only I could hear it. And you couldn't hear it outside of the living room. So that wasn't a problem. And he started walking towards the stereo. And I figured, oh, great, he's going to turn this off. You know, just as the song Pretty Fly for a White Guy came on, you know, by The Offspring. And he goes walking up to the radio. I'm like, oh, great. Because at the time, that was one of my favorite songs, right? And he goes walking up there and grabbed the volume control and cranked it. Like, he turned it up. And that subwoofer was on. And every door in that apartment was rattling from the bass. And here's my dad in his robe, dripping with water from being in the shower. Well, not dripping, but he was still wet from the shower. Dancing away to Pretty Fly for a White Guy. That was hilarious. And since then, like from then until when he passed away, we were close, not only because of our mutual love for wrestling, but our mutual taste in music as well. So that was pretty cool. That was cool. I mean, I will never, ever, ever forget that. You know, that is my most favorite memory of my father. But I see that I've taken up a lot of your time talking about my father and everything, but you know, I just had to tell somebody about it and get it off my chest. Maybe I'll feel better about the whole thing now. So I'd like to say thank you and take it easy.